Number 5, Dr. Russell Norman.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, Dr. Russell Norman.
I seek leave to move this question back to the Minister of Finance.
Order. That is not. We've discussed this before. Order. The government has every right to transfer a question unless it is an opportunity whereby I don't believe an answer would be adequately given. The government has to. Would the Honourable Winston Peters please stop interjecting while I'm on my feet? Now, on this occasion, there is simply no point in putting the leave because the government has already made its decision. If the government wanted to put leave, it could do so. I doubt whether it wants to. But for the member to ask to put leave for the government to do something is not acceptable. Does the member want to continue with the question?
Well, point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Order.
Order.
Before the member starts, I just want to check that this is a fresh point of order.
This is in relation to your ruling.
Is this a French? Is the member now questioning my ruling?
No, I'm not questioning the ruling.
Well, then the
Mr.
member
Speaker.
will proceed to answer question number 5.
Okay. All right. So my question, Mr. Speaker, is to the Minister for State-Owned Enterprises and asks, did officials provide the government with an estimate of the cost to the Crown in foregone interest of allowing retail buyers of Meridian Energy shares to pay for their shares in instalments? If so, what was that estimate?
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr. Speaker, no, because any such estimate would be affected by many factors, and particularly the share price, which has yet to be set. Our commercial advice is that instalment receipts will increase demand and widespread New Zealand ownership, and investors will, as the Minister of Finance said, take this into account in terms of price and demand.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
So is the Minister telling us that this policy is uncosted, that Treasury provided no band as to what the cost may be of these interest-free loans, and the government's going to proceed down this path having no idea as to the cost?
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr. Speaker, as I explained in my primary answer and as the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, gave in his answer, the reason why there is no estimate is because of the myriad of factors that would support this. And as the Minister of Finance says, investors will take this into account in terms of price and demand, as I'm sure New Zealanders will take into account the fact that this provides them with an opportunity to invest in a very long-term business and release cash which can be used to invest in important social infrastructure like schools, roads and hospitals.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So if the government has no idea as to the cost of this policy, how could it conduct a rational benefit versus cost analysis of this policy if it has absolutely no idea as to the cost of the policy?
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr. Speaker, of course what the government measures this against is our off-stated policy about the mixed ownership model program and the benefits that will flow to New Zealand from that, in terms of wider New Zealand ownership, deepening the capital markets, providing revenue and capital that can be used to invest in schools, roads and hospitals. And I have to say, as I travel around New Zealand, people are excited about the opportunities to have more capital to invest in social infrastructure.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Can he confirm that large retail investors, like the 400 who bought an average of $250,000 worth of Mighty River shares, that those investors will effectively be getting a $100,000 interest-free loan under this policy, which is effectively a gift worth about $8,000 to $10,000 to them from the rest of New Zealand?
Well,
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think, as Mr. Foss says, no one's bought anything yet because the shares have yet to be floated. But what I can tell the member is that instalment receipts will provide an opportunity for New Zealanders to take potentially a bigger stake in Meridian Energy than they might have previously. And what it will do for all New Zealand is free up cash which we can make available through the Future Investment Fund for important infrastructure like schools, roads and hospitals. And in my other ministerial portfolio, I'm very pleased that there will be over $420 million for the Christchurch City hospitals.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
What is the ethical or moral basis for a policy in which ordinary New Zealand families struggling to save to buy a home, for example, are forced to contribute gifts to wealthy investors who can afford to stump up with $250,000 to buy shares in this company? Why should ordinary New Zealand families have to gift these people $10,000?
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think the member should consider that this is gifting anybody anything. The member seems to have the basis that everything has to match a certain group of people. Well, actually, the $426 million going into Christchurch Hospital will benefit 10% of the population. But the other 90% are happy to make that social investment because it's part of building our nation's infrastructure. And we are on the side of nation building, not destruction like that party.
Order.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question. Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does he dispute any of this summary of the asset sale program to date? First, Treasury warned that there would be no significant economic gains from the sales and they would permanently increase the government deficit. Then Solid Energy turned out to be unfit to sell. Mighty River sold for less than expected and only half the New Zealand buyers that were forecast to show up.
Order! Order!
$25 million.
Order! Member will resume his seat. The member needs to refer to Standing Order 377 as to the content of questions. That question is now becoming very long, a summary of a lot of events which breaches Standing Order. I invite the member to curtail his question and ask a question that is in line with Standing Orders.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does he dispute the summary of the asset sale program, which includes a number of matters of failed policy on the government's behalf, and which ends with this government now forking over tens of millions of dollars of taxpayers' money in a desperate bid to bribe people to buy Meridian shares?
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Yes.
Question number 6, the Honourable Peter Dunn.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Justice and asks, why were the Electoral Act 1993 and the Electoral Regulation